Hello, this is the Lord's Legion and welcome to a brand new movie review, and as you can see, this is part of the series known as The Path to Infinity War, where I will be reviewing each and every film within the Marvel Cinematic Universe just before the release of Avengers Infinity War. And to continue on with this journey, we're going to be looking at Thor, to which looking back, many people think that Thor is a pretty forgettable movie, and is that really the case? Well, let's find out. Looking back at phase 1, clearly Thor was by far the most risky character to pull off, because at the time the MCU was still a fairly grounded universe, so it was pretty difficult for them to expand upon the magic side of the MCU at this point in time. But the real question is Thor even a strong film within the MCU? I would say so. Again, it's not one of the best, but I do think that it is a pretty solid film altogether. So the main story revolves around an arrogant Asgardian known as Thor, as to which he is so cocky that he almost caused a war against the Asgardians as well as the Frost Giants. And because of his arrogance, that led to his father Odin deciding to exile Thor so that he could learn how to be a better person. And while Thor was exiled on Earth, Loki becomes power hungry to the point where he wants to be the new king of Asgard. And it's up to the newly redeemed Thor to take down his younger brother. Now, what I find pretty unique about Thor's origin story is the fact that it's pretty much going in the other direction, when usually it's a man becoming a hero. However, in Thor's case, it's actually a god trying to become a better man. And honestly, I think Chris Hemsworth does a pretty good job with Thor, because he can pull off both the arrogant side of the character as well as a more humble Thor. And similarly with Tony Stark, you actually want to see this character progress into a better person. Tom Hiddleston does a very good job as Loki, and although he does seem a little tame in comparison to his future appearances, this is pretty much Loki's transformation as the god of mischief that we all know and love. And he's a lot more refreshing in comparison to the previous MCU villains because he's more sympathetic. And he isn't just a total mirror match for Thor. Natalie Portman as Jane Foster, as well as pretty much everyone from the Earth section of the film, are pretty weak, uninteresting and forgettable. Sure, they do have a purpose in this film, however, you could easily make them a lot better. Anthony Hopkins as Odin is a pretty interesting character, and I do like his relationship with both Thor and Loki. Although I do wish that we did get to see a bit more out of that character. And I can pretty much say the same for Idris Elba as Heimdall, because once again he did a pretty great job with what little he had to work with. And this pretty much applies to every Asgardian in this film, because despite how little screen time they had a lot more personality in comparison to the human characters. And as you guys can already tell, my least favourite part in the entire film is of course the Earth side, because they just seem so bland and forgettable. I do understand why they had to put Thor on Earth, because at the time Marvel Studios did have a lower budget for these movies, but even then they could have done much better with the Earth section. And this especially sucks because when you actually get to see Asgard and Jotunheim, these are the sections where Thor really shines. And the realms themselves, although not really as explored, are pretty interesting on their own. And I'd rather see more of the other realms as opposed to the Earth sections. The action scenes, for the most part at least, were pretty exciting. Although in some cases the CG doesn't really work as well, and haven't really aged as well as you'd think. Although on the flip side to that, the costumes as well as the set designs were actually really good. Each of the Asgardian costumes have their very own flair to them, and overall they did nail the costumes without making them too goofy, especially with both Thor and Loki's helmets. And what I also thought really aged well were of course the Frost Giants, as the practical effects for the Frost Giants still really hold up. And although it is pretty difficult on pointing out which Frost Giant is which, the overall look to them are pretty refreshing. But in the end, despite its flaws, I still think that Thor is a pretty decent movie. It had a really intriguing origin story for our main character, and plus the acting for the most part were really stellar. And despite the Earth sections of this movie being completely awful, as well as just how limited the film really seems at times, I still think Thor really comes through with its interesting mythos, as well as some really exciting fight scenes. And honestly, with the exception of Iron Man 1 and the Avengers, I honestly do believe that Thor has aged a lot better in comparison to the other films in phase 1. And so for my final verdict for Thor 1, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Yes, it has its flaws, but for the most part, I still think it's a solid film on its own. And if I were you, I would give Thor another chance. So what do you think of the Thor movie? Do you believe that it's an underrated gem, or do you believe that it's just another forgettable movie from phase 1? Comment below and share some thoughts. And as always, thank you guys for watching this video. Please like and subscribe. Take care and have a good one.